You're listening to the Cash News Podcast with Tom Meehan and Shaun Ferrari.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Cash News Podcast. As always, Shaun Ferrari, there he is, the man, the myth, the legend. He's gonna be taking the most of the talking points here because their executive summit for currency research happened this week. So we are at episode 20, and we're taping December 10th. And I'm going to say that just because with holidays and things, who knows when this comes out. And I was fortunate enough to join at the very, very tail end and spend some time with the group. And I'm super glad that I was able to. I unfortunately couldn't make the whole event, but this is going to be the Shaun show today because, although I got to hear everybody at the dinner table talking about it, I wasn't there. So over to you, my friend.
Well, thank you, sir. I think you may be the true man, myth, and legend, and I am just, your humble sidekick. But nonetheless, thrilled to talk to everybody. Thanks for dialing in and podcasting, listening to us wherever you are. We are honored to have you with us in this holiday season. So maybe while you're wrapping presents or preparing your gift cards or stuffing hard currency into envelopes for all of your gift giving pleasure, you can listen to us talk about it. So we did have our executive summit. It was a new initiative we tried this year, given that folks were still a little concerned about traveling and it wasn't quite the right time to get a large group together for us yet. So we decided we would have a small group of executives gather. We met in Chicago and we had a great turnout. We had about just under 20 people. We had about 17 or 18 folks show up, which turned out to be the perfect number. And we had it really representing all aspects of the industry. We had a couple commercial banks, CITs, we had some suppliers, and then the Fed came as well. So we had a good representation of folks. And I will throw out a thank you to J.R. Davis and Davis Bank Corp here because they did sponsor the gathering a bit in their hometown. So if anyone from Chicago is listening, or if JR happens to be listening, thank you. Greatly appreciated. It was a good day. I mean, it was a full day. We went all day, and the nice part was I don't know how much of this was due to the topics or how much of this is because folks were just happy to be together in the same room talking about things once again after a couple year hiatus of the face-to-face gatherings. But there was definitely no shortage of conversation to be had. It was a very free-flowing day, covering a lot of topics that are going on in the industry, and we had great discussion. So I'll just take a little bit of time here and just go over a couple of the topics that folks naturally gravitated to for the course of the day. We were going to do this a version of this live from there and actually talk to some folks, but in all honesty, the conversation was going so well throughout the day that it didn't really leave us enough time at the end to have a break where we could do this live. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the recap here. And then maybe over the coming weeks, we can get a few folks on who were there to talk about stuff. But nonetheless, so I think, one of the main points that we started with was, a lot of the folks were wondering what just was going on in the realm of cash. Is it staying? Is it going? What's going on? And of course, this group is predisposed as working with cash on a day in and day out basis. Everybody pretty much sees the fact that it's not going away, right? I mean, I think everybody is interested to see how the online trends and the online shopping and stuff that's really taken off during the pandemic, how much of that stays, how much of that goes, what the new volume levels will be. And I think everybody is kind of, from a processing standpoint or a handling standpoint, sees the decline in receipts coming in to some degree. However, the receipts are still strong as it comes in. So I think everybody is kind of in this wait and see what will happen as folks re-engage with the economy. They're not worried about cash not being a payment instrument or decreasing to any dangerous level of being low on the, but they are concerned what happens if there's a crush of cash that comes back and folks have downsized a little bit in terms of cash ops. Will we be able to handle the return? And one of the interesting points, I think, was we spent a lot of time talking about coin, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But their thinking on it was, there is a coin challenge at the moment in terms of handling the amount of coin that's circulating and getting it to circulate efficiently. And what happens if, we don't be mindful on what's happening with changes in currency volumes, and could someday in the future the similar supply issues that are going on with coin, could that happen in the cash space if we're not careful? And I think my friend and colleague David Hensley from the UK coined the term, kind of, no pun intended, but coined the term, don't sleepwalk into a cashless society, right? And he's particularly mindful of that, because what can happen, and what this group was particularly sensitive to was, we can slowly, without thinking about it, keep reducing infrastructure, right, around cash processing or cash handling, cash distribution. And then what happens when you need it? Or what happens with financial inclusion? What happens when people have to drive an hour to get to a ATM to get cash? What happens if they can't do that? I mean, there's a whole host of things. And financial inclusion started to come up at that point where, that's definitely a piece where cash plays a valuable hand, and will for the foreseeable future. So we talked a bit about that. We talked about the point of sale changes in terms of putting more customer facing cash acceptance devices, kiosks, if you will. Sorry, hold on one second. Let me just, there, okay. Yeah, putting more like cash acceptance, customer facing type terminals in places. And I think it seems like one of the trends that's happening is all of the kiosks that have been put in place. Sorry, I just have to deal with this 1 second. Yeah, all of the kiosks that have been put in place over time, particularly in the quick serve space, are great at taking digital payment, credit card aspects, but very few, if any, accept cash at the moment. And what we were hearing anyway was what a lot of the places that have put those in are finding is that it's actually it can be a negative hit on sales, to the degree that if you're a normal cash paying customer and you have to be rerouted from the kiosk to then go pay cash at the register, you're getting in yet another line, and you're waiting, and you might not be happy waiting, and you leave without paying or without getting your product, right? So they were mentioning a couple stores have actually started to do studies on that, and they're finding that they're losing significant amounts of revenue by not accepting cash at that point of sale. So there may be a kind of retrofit coming to either put more cash acceptance customer service facing kiosks in place, or getting rid of them altogether and shuffling people back through the main line. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes, but it does kind of speak to cash's relevance to a significant segment of the population. So we talked about that. Then I would be remiss here if I didn't bring up coin, because we spent all the conversation kept coming back to coin and the get coin moving challenges that are going on in the US right now. We're back to allocating amounts of coin to different depository institutions from the Fed so that at least everybody gets a little coin. There are still challenges spreading it about the country. And what seems to be happening right now is retail, to a large degree, is taking matters into their own hands, as you would expect in a shortage. And they're, I think, increasing their hoarding, where everybody seems to be hoarding so they have coin, which does not help spread it around efficiently, but it is the free market working its magic.
The coin hoarding. It's like everything else right now. I listened to another podcast, which Snacks Daily, and it's a Robin Hood Snacks Daily, so it's a financial podcast, and I listen to it every day, 15 minutes. Not as good as our podcast, but a good podcast. And every week they talk about the weekly item that's being hoarded. And so it's every week during this pandemic, it goes from paper goods to this, and immediately when we were talking at dinner, I thought of the coin hoarding and how little it gets in the news, but people don't realize that people are sitting on so much coin right now.
Yeah. There was a particular, I'll call it a retailer, at this event. And what was fascinating was they were telling their story about how, it's essential for them that they have coin to meet their customer experience. And they do not want to tell anybody no for anything. And particularly if it's somebody trying to buy something. So they, again, took matters into their own hands. They get a lot of coin throughout the year. They collect it in various fountains or other areas around their facility, and they get a lot of it. And rather than deposit it, they're quite upfront about the fact they're holding it, and they will continue to hold it, and they'll work out deals with even their competitors, to trade what they have to trade and sell back and forth, and manage the coin circulation themselves. But they plan on doing that. And that's one. I get it. It's only one case study, if you will, but I don't think it's very far-fetched to say that type of hoarding, and again, the market working itself out, I don't even know that there's a problem with it, honestly. I mean, it might not be the most efficient way of doing it, but having economic entities trade things between themselves to facilitate commerce, if it's, might be okay. Yeah, there's going to be some losers in that, and it will likely get back to a more equilibrium state at some point. But right now, anyway, I think that's where a lot of the coin is. It's just, if people want to be able to make change, they want to be able to not turn away customers, so they're going to hold on to it. We talked a bit about what could a solution be. There isn't a good one right now that folks have on the table, other than more PR type programs, or maybe encouraging folks to do some of this trading with each other, but in a more visible way, so that maybe there's some sort of central clearing party that can kind of have a better view at what's going on. Which leads to another topic we were talking about, which was cash visibility, which has been going on in the US, or trying to get going in the US for many years, and it's a slow haul there. But the coin thing kind of speaks to it, where if there was visibility in how much of what denomination was where, even if it was just among depository institutions, that would go a long way to being able to move it where it needed to be, in a more efficient manner. It's just another use case for visibility. Most folks think of the initial use case as kind of dock exchanges, making sure deposits and orders can be processed quickly and efficiently, and you know where your money is. But another case is, if you know where your money is, you can then balance it a little more efficiently between agents than happens now. So we spent a lot of time talking about that, and what the impediments are to having folks trade data that you need in this deposit tracking type program. And I think everybody agrees at this point, it's not a huge technological lift. It's just a change in the way that folks are operating. And there is some expenditure required in terms of an IT system or what have you, that needs to be planned into budgets. And I think that's where it, unless there's a definitive need shown, it's always hard to get budget dollars to do anything. And it's hard to pinpoint the the cost savings that an institution may see because of this. So that's some of the struggle, along with the perception, which goes to the first point I talked about, along with the perception, especially at kind of like the C-level folks of a bank or wherever, that cash is going away, right? It's not sexy. They just don't think that it's going to be around, regardless of what the ops folks may say or what have you. But it's hard to walk into a boardroom and get approval to spend money on cash or a cash process, because there's just an inherent bias of, why would I do that? Isn't it going to be all credit card and all digital going forward? So that's what we spent the day talking about. The Fed was there to kind of hear a lot of this and respond, a bit. I will say, from the travel standpoint, I know we all kind of talk about that a little bit here. Tom and I do week to week. It was a very natural environment. Once we all got together, we all really enjoyed it. There was really no hesitation to be around each other. It was a pretty normal experience, and it felt good to do that. Also happy to hear from our colleagues at the Fed that at least some of the reserve banks seem to be moving back to in-person and kind of normal-ish work think pretty rapidly in the new year. So that was encouraging to hear, that things are going to return to a bit more normal on that front. I think that'll obviously differ from reserve bank to company, but at least there's some movement there. So yeah, that's a really fast kind of summary of what we talked about, and where we're going to go. We'll probably, I think it was a successful meeting of the industry, definitely able to have more in-depth and more connection points there with everybody there than we can at a huge or a bigger conference. So I think there's room for meetings like this to continue, and we're going to look for ways to do that as we go forward. So that's it, sir.
Awesome. So yeah, I cash visibility, and I didn't want to jump in when you were saying it. It's something that I've been working on for the last 5 years and still struggle with a little bit of understanding why we're not further along in the industry. And I think your point about coin is, for all the listeners, imagine if you could track coin, that if you knew where it was right now, and you could call people and barter to get it back and do things. Not that I ever would expect to see the same level of challenge with bills. I know anecdotally bills are easier to print. There's other things, they're lighter, they're easier to move, but the need for visibility in the industry is real. And I still sometimes perplexed that we're this far along and haven't gotten to where we are. And if you go to a country like France, and I understand it's not as big as the US, and there's several European countries that are fully engaged and have different rules and see the benefit. So I'm eager to see. I obviously know that some people are doing it. I know in my day job we get calls pretty often about what, can we support it? Can we, what's the benefit? And so I think we should and will probably have a couple podcasts just on visibility. Maybe we'll get to see if we get someone to come on and just give us an update from the Cash Advisory Council or from GS1, just to give us an update of what the thought is. I understand some of the complexities from the retail side, but to me, 5 years ago, I thought it was interesting that we weren't further along, and now being as ingrained as I am, I think COVID definitely slowed it down. I think pre-COVID there was a momentum for, at least it felt like there was some momentum with it. Everybody's talking about it and there were plans, and I think that got fumbled up. But if we think a shortage of coin is daunting, and I know I say debacle, and I'm half joking about it, but if we think it's daunting, imagine if we had that issue with cash, and just imagine if we had a way to tell where all the money was, how much easier it would be to address it. And then that's kind of that's not the intended benefit of it, but I just think it's one of those things, and I will definitely get some folks on here to talk about it, because and we probably will with coin, right, too. Like that was the two topics. We'll probably get some folks on here to conversate, and hopefully the listeners get some benefit out of it.
Yeah, I think so. And just one other point on visibility, I think the two things that really hamper it here in the U.S. compared to some other European countries or wherever is one, mandates. The foreign other central banks are more apt to regulate it and just say you must do it. The Fed, because of the nature of it and the US and what have you, it tends to shy away from mandating or regulating as much as possible. And in this case, it's more of a, we would like you to. It's a suggestion. They'll find ways to incent it, I'm sure, but nonetheless, it's a much softer approach. And it's also, there's 11,000 plus financial institutions that hit the dock, right? So it's hard because you have to be equitable. They have to be equitable, right? So it's like, okay, well, maybe a big guy is able to do this, but what about the savings and loan down the street, the credit union down the street that comes in, and how do we whatever deal with that situation as well? So they're dealing with a lot. That's not really an excuse, but it's just an explanation of why it's sometimes more challenging to get things done here than than elsewhere.
Yeah. And I mean, I want to be, just because I think it's important to say this, I'm not by any means oversimplifying it. I think my ultimate, when I say it's a no-brainer, is the benefit is so substantial for an armored carrier. It's probably more substantial than anybody else, like being able to get efficiencies and being able to communicate. But it's just standardization brings technology to the forefront and allows you to have a technology or a solution provider. Everybody's focusing on the same thing. So you don't have 50 versions of software doing 50 different things. You don't have 50 different types of readers. So there's all sorts of benefits. And I know you know that. And I know the audience actually generally knows that too. I also know the level of detail that's required to upgrade software systems. And, I do that for a living, right? So I understand that, hey, Tom, this is really easy, but who's going to pay to upgrade our software and get it ready and train everybody? So that's all part of it. But I'm hoping that one day we'll see it. I still believe that there will be some level of implementation in the next 2 to 3 years. And then
all this stuff takes like a forcing event, right? I mean, if you look at remote deposit capture, where we all take a picture of our checks now, and yes, every depository institution in the country converted to that, but what did that take? It took an literally Check 21 act of Congress to regulate it, coming out of 9/11. So I mean, that's it can happen. It just takes, and until there's like a forcing event, it's hard to move anything along.
And that's a great example of a lot of the things we see in banking that it's not that people don't want to do it. It's that it's a big machine with a lot of moving parts, and sometimes there has to be a regulatory event to drive it. And it's funny you say that, because someone else was talking to me about, actually at dinner, we were having a conversation about, remember when you had to actually physically do things, and we thought it was impossible then, so yeah, I definitely think the takeaway here is we'll have some folks on to talk about it that know a lot more about it than Shaun and I, and are actively involved. And I think I was very, very involved pre-COVID, and then kind of have been involved from a customer standpoint. And by all means, anybody that's listening, that's what the podcast is for, is to gather information. If there are specific questions, reach out to Shaun or myself, and we'll come up together to go ahead and look at it. So with that, episode 20, I think it might not be episode 20, because we may do this one sooner, so I'm going to take that back. Because I don't think you'll actually see this at episode 20. We've taped more than a few now, so we're really excited, and we're happy for all listeners. Please like and subscribe and give us a review if you can. I am still amazed by the amount of people that I see that listen to it are not subscribed to it. So it's a common theme. And by the way, I gather from some of the things I've been hearing is that's not uncommon, because people use aggregators that they just go in and search. But please listen, like, subscribe, and give us a review if you can. We really appreciate it. It helps us out a lot. And we'll be seeing you soon.
Absolutely. Have a good, I assume this will be coming out before the holidays are over. So, continue having a good holiday season out there.
Yeah.
And we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.